Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. 90% of pigs in England and Wales are killed using carbon dioxide, but a new report says the method causes the animals pain and distress and should be stopped. What will the pig industry do?
We know that CO2 causes pain, causes respiratory distress, and we know that argon and some of the other inert gases are available.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, though, this week we're focusing on beer and cider. Well, back in March this year, the drinks company Heineken produced a report which said UK cider sales topped £2 billion for the first time. Cider on tap in pubs and flavoured ciders, especially for home consumption, pushed up sales. Well, one of the biggest cider producers in the UK, making 65 million litres every year, is Westons, based in Herefordshire. The business started in 1880 and now works with 180 apple growers and orchard owners in Gloucestershire, Worcestershire and Herefordshire, the heart of apple country. Marie Lennon met their business development manager, Daryl Hinksman.
We're looking at a pit full with about 80 tonnes of cider apples, bittersweet apples. All these will have been grown locally within 50 miles of here. They're the basis of all English-style ciders, really. So bittersweet apples, very high in tannin, and varieties like Michelin and Dabinet. Those are the two main varieties that we use to produce our cider.
And some of the orchards that you're working with, are they very long-established orchards?
Yes. The one just over there is probably getting towards 100 years old.
The smell is so wonderful. It's just sweet and earthy, and we're looking at a mountain of them.
We're in the peak of the season now. We're hoping to process around 40,000 tonnes of bittersweet apples this season.
What's the growing year been like?
It's been a really strange growing year because we had a long, hot, dry summer. And what we're finding is sugar levels are really good, which aid fermentation and produce a stronger drink before we blend it back. But the overall size of the apple is slightly down. So the one is compensating for the other. So the apples are tipped into the pits and then they're fed by water down to what's called the apple tables, where they run across rollers.
They kind of bounce along.
They bounce along. Then they go into a mill where they're chopped up into small bits. Then they go into the presses where they're squeezed to extract as much juice as possible. All our ciders spend time maturing in oak vats, some of which were the oak vats originally used by Henry Westons in 1880.
Oh my goodness. In my head, I had a very small oak vat, very traditional, old-fashioned. These are giants.
Some of these are 140 years old. The benefit is it imparts a flavour from the barrel. From years and years of cider fermenting in the oak barrels, the wood is almost saturated with the flavour of cider. So what it means is you get this roundness and this maturity and this lovely blend of apples and mellow oak.
We're in the main yard and it looks like a busy day with lorries coming in and out constantly, but I guess there's no such thing as a quiet day, is there really?
Over the last few years, it's become a year-round drink, yeah.
Tell me a bit about the cider industry in the UK generally. Lots of hospitality really suffered during the pandemic and some places haven't fully recovered. How has cider fared?
Cider's fared pretty well over the last 10 years. Obviously, we suffered after the pandemic because the on-trade was closed down for a significant period of time. This is pubs, clubs, restaurants, bars. They've just about got to the level they were in terms of volume sold pre-pandemic. But what has happened is the off-trade, so sales through supermarkets, shops, that has continued to grow and is growing year on year, and cider is growing within that. So it's very encouraging, yeah. Drinking habits are formed primarily in the on-trade, in pubs and clubs.
What's the next big development in cider, do you think?
I think we'll continue to see premiumisation. I suspect we will see larger bottle formats. So instead of 500ml bottles, 75cl bottles, almost as like a wine substitute with a screw top.
Well, isn't that the theory that cider is the wine of the UK, really?
It is. And these larger bottles really fulfil that need because it's something you can put on the table at dinner and share it.
Do you like drinking it yourself?
I do, very much.
Is that how you got into this?
It is how I started. My family are actually apple growers in the west of Hereford, so I've been around it since I was a child. I do drink cider.
Daryl Hinksman at Westons Cider. An independent review of the way pigs are slaughtered has called for the use of carbon dioxide gassing to be prohibited because it causes too much distress and pain to the animals. 90% of pigs reared in England and Wales are slaughtered this way. The report was carried out by the Animal Welfare Committee, an independent expert committee from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the Scottish Government and the Welsh Government. It recommends instead that argon gas should be used. It's been found to cause significantly less distress and suffering. Dr. Jane Downs led the Animal Welfare Committee at the time the report was prepared.
What CO2 does, when the pigs breathe it in, and it reduces the oxygen in the bloodstream and it causes acidosis in the blood, and that causes the tissues to stop functioning and the pigs to die.
What are your concerns about using CO2?
Well, the biggest problem with CO2 is it causes pain, suffering and distress. So when the CO2 comes into contact with the mucous membranes of the pig, so that's the eyes, nose, ears and throat, it turns into carbonic acid, and that acid is aversive. The secondary thing is that once it gets into the lungs, it causes respiratory action, which causes the pigs to gasp. And so that becomes stressful and they suffer from air hunger. So they're wanting to breathe and they can't.
What is the best alternative?
Well, the committee hasn't decided on a best alternative because that will be for operators to decide. But there are alternatives available. So if you were going to go down the gas stunning route and the controlled atmosphere route, then we think at the moment the best available option is argon. There has been work done in argon in Europe on the EU pig stun work, and that does show that the pigs suffer far less aversion, and because they're suffering from a lack of oxygen rather than a combination of increased carbon dioxide and oxygen, then there is much less respiratory distress as well. Of course, the other systems that are still available within the legislation, so that's electrical stunning and this head only and head to heart, is a good system. This was a system we used to use before gas stunning came along, but the pre-handling was not good. So the pigs suffered an enormous amount of stress before they entered the stunning system. Now we have a lot more technology and a lot more methods that we can use to encourage the pigs to move forward and take that stress away.
There are a few problems with argon, I believe, that it is effective, it's less distress causing, but it doesn't last that long.
What happens with argon is that the pigs are rendered unconscious, but they can come around much more quickly. So if you put a pig into argon and it just loses its balance and you take it out again, it stands up straight away. So the most important thing if we're using argon, and this is one of our recommendations, is that there must be enough of a dwell time in the gas to ensure that the pig is rendered completely irreversibly unconscious. And that does lengthen the amount of time in comparison to the use of CO2.
Would that slow down the process so that it wouldn't be so commercially viable?
If you just left the system as it stood, with one line of pigs going through, then yes, that would slow down the system. But there are options to put in two parallel lines going together, and this will be more expensive as well. And we recognise that, and the committee has thought about it, although it wasn't in our remit. Our remit is to say, what is the best welfare of the animal at the end of the day?
The Association of Independent Meat Suppliers has responded to your report, and they're warning that the document misrepresents the realities of modern slaughter systems, it says, and risks reversing decades of welfare progress.
Well, I personally have worked within this world for many years now, and I've seen lots of steps forward. The system was a lot better than it used to be. But we have this now available to us. We know that CO2 causes pain, causes respiratory distress, and we know that argon and some of the other inert gases, which would need more research put together to build commercial systems, but they are available. And should we let that stop us, the fact that it's a commercial rather than a welfare benefit?
Dr. Jane Downs from the Animal Welfare Committee. Well, as we just heard, the meat industry has its doubts about replacing CO2 for pig slaughter. Despite a recognition of the distress and pain the current system causes, Katie Jarvis, Chief Policy Advisor at the National Pig Association, told me changing the process would present challenges for the industry.
Within the pig industry, we don't pretend that CO2 is absolutely perfect. However, what it is the most humane method that is available to us right now. And when I say available, I mean on a commercial scale, on a welfare basis, and in terms of allowing us to get the throughput at the abattoirs that we need in order to provide the market with pork.
However, there was a recommendation way back in 2003 to stop using CO2.
Yeah, and we're aware that, this has been an ongoing concern for many. And what we're doing as an industry is we have a group, the producers from the MPA, the abattoirs, the processors, veterinary societies as well, to look at alternatives. And there are, of course, alternatives out there. The report does refer to some of them and highlights sort of some of the pros and cons. The problem we have is none of these have been adequately tested on a commercial scale.
The report says that argon is the inert gas which could be used instead of CO2. You could actually use more lines of pigs and use argon and still keep up the throughput.
It is true that if you increase the lines, you can maintain the throughput. However, we have very few abattoirs processing pigs at a commercial scale, at a large scale in this country now, very few indeed. And many of those don't actually have the physical space to introduce new lines. Literally within the buildings themselves, within their properties, there is no space to put those lines in. And what we don't want is the unintended consequence of actually pigs backing up on farm and therefore welfare issues on farm because we can't get them through the abattoirs in time. And that is currently the big concern with argon.
But that would be a temporary problem, wouldn't it? So why don't you put in place the process to make that happen?
To be clear, we're not saying this can't be done, and we're not saying that it shouldn't be done. What we are saying is that we need that commercial scale trial in order to test this. At the moment, the uncertainty around its efficacy, as well as that financial and planning commitment that we would need, is the problem. As the MPA, we do believe we need to take action on the slaughter and stunning of pigs to ensure the best welfare that we possibly can. However, we do need to see that level of trial, and we're really encouraging industry and government and any funding body possible to engage with us in this process.
How much longer is it going to take to stop using it?
That is a difficult question that I don't think I can answer completely, because I simply don't know. For, the MPA, we are doing the best we can to encourage it, but at the same time, it is up to individual companies how much they choose to engage with this, how much they choose to invest. It obviously is something that's really in the public eye, and the research, such as the report that AWC has come out with, that is putting more pressure on it. And again, that's not a bad thing, but I wouldn't be able to say how long it would take. But we are very aware that it's a big concern, and over the last 2 years, we really have been trying to push as much as possible and engaging with international partners as well, because this is not just a UK issue. This is the method of stunning that is used across the world with this large commercial pig production.
Katie Jarvis from the National Pig Association. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.